That dreadful bomb in Boston has resulted in a number of people with amputated limbs. It has been horrendous. And they still don't know who did it. The FBI is finding out more about those deadly bombs, but the mystery remains. Who did it? Why did they do it?
Pat, the government is asking anyone with information about possible suspects to come forward. And people in Boston say they're not going to let this act of terrorism stop them from moving on. Here's Charlene Israel with the story.
It's a major breakthrough in the investigation of the Boston Marathon explosions. Federal investigators say they've recovered the partial remains of one of the bombs. It appears to be a medium-sized pressure cooker, packed with wires, a circuit board, nails, and ball bearings.
It appears that this device may have been dropped in a backpack, either inside the trash cans or right outside the trash cans.
The design was immediately recognized by counterterrorism experts as a type used by al-Qaeda operatives around the world. Instructions on making a pressure cooker bomb were included in an al-Qaeda magazine article called How to Make a Bomb in the Kitchen of Your Mom. But while the design is clearly al-Qaeda's, no individual or group has taken responsibility. Federal investigators are urging the public to come forward with pictures or any other information that could lead to an arrest.
The person who did this is someone's friend, neighbor, coworker, or relative. Someone knows who did this.
As authorities race to find the terrorist before he escapes, Boston remains a city in pain. But despite this time of mourning, residents say they're still Boston strong. Organizers have already announced that next year's Boston Marathon will go on, and locals say they will too.
As an American, my heart is broken. But as a Bostonian, my resolve for the pursuit of freedom and liberty has never been stronger.
We're strong people, and we're not going to let anyone push us around. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us.
Charlene Israel, CBN News.
Thanks, Charlene. You know, there's an article the AP put out about America as a land of soft targets, and we want to keep it that way. We don't want wire, guns, police everywhere. We just don't want that. We're free people. We want to walk free and think free. But unfortunately, that means we're vulnerable to these crazy people who live in a world of fanaticism and terror and death. It's a religion of death. And the maiming that took place of people in this bomb is just shocking. You just think how many people, maybe as many as 13 people, have had amputations because of the ball bearings and other debris that was put into this bomb. It's shocking. But we're going to stay free, and my hats off to the people in Boston. They're tough, they're resilient, and they're not going to allow one or two crazy bombers to keep them from doing what they want to do. And so sooner or later that person will be found and brought to justice. We hope they hurry it up. Well, while America's mourning the victims in Boston, Great Britain is remembering one of its greatest leaders in a final ceremony that took place today. And of course, as the time change, it's already happened. Lee Webb has that story from the CBN newsroom. Lee.
Pat, Margaret Thatcher is being laid to rest today and with full military honors. World leaders and dignitaries from 170 countries are attending the funeral at St. Paul's Cathedral in London. Queen Elizabeth and her husband, Prince Philip, are among the mourners. Thatcher was nicknamed the Iron Lady during her 11-year tenure as Prime Minister. Her Christian background was linked to her strong conviction for less government, lower taxes, more freedom, and greater personal responsibility. She once wrote, "I believe in what are often referred to as Judeo-Christian values. Indeed, my whole political philosophy is based on them." Climate scientists are trying to figure out why the Earth has not been getting warmer. Most climate models did not predict what's actually happened. The rise in temperatures slowed down around the year 2000. Scientists tell Reuters they have many theories for the pause in global warming, but some experts say their trust in climate science has gone down because of all the uncertainties. Well, a Senate push for new gun control measures is in deep trouble now. A growing number of Republicans oppose a plan to expand background checks. And there may not be enough votes to pass the bill. That comes as a new Associated Press poll shows support for tighter gun control has dropped significantly. In January, 58% supported the move in the wake of the elementary school shooting in Newtown, Connecticut. Now, just over 49% favor them. Pat?
You know, Lee, I'm appalled. We've got an economy that's in serious, serious trouble. We have a budget that's out of control. We have this huge debt. We have a crisis in Social Security and in health care, et cetera, et cetera. And you ask yourself, why are they spending weeks and weeks and months on gun control? What is it? Well, this is part of the agenda of the left. They're all hooked up on climate change, and all of a sudden, all that science has been proven to be a bit erroneous, and so they have to ride another hobby horse. But if they just get out and get people to work and getting some jobs, I think it would help a whole lot, because there are people out of work and they're suffering. Lee?
North Korea is demanding an apology from South Korea for what it calls hostile acts, and it's threatening to take action against that country at any time. But the threats have done little to shake the resolve of South Koreans. George Thomas has that story now from Seoul.
This new video, released by a pro-North Korean group, shows what looks like the White House under attack.
The news images have gripped our television screens for weeks. North Koreans on their march to war against America, South Korea and Japan, with threats of nuclear destruction. But spend an afternoon like I did in Myeongdong, the busy shopping center in the heart of Seoul, South Korea, and you get the feeling the West is more concerned about North Korea than most Koreans.
After so many years of living with their unpredictable neighbor, South Koreans are rather indifferent to the so-called crisis on the Korean peninsula. They've lived with this and they're used to it. And so here you have a regular, normal day on the streets of Seoul.
The shops are full, the streets are packed with people spring shopping, and the traffic in Seoul is still a nightmare.
We've heard the North Korean rhetoric for years. They blustered last year and the year before and the year before.
It's all too familiar drumbeat to the young and old.
We call it political blackmail. The North Koreans threaten war, and eventually the West and our government will give in to more concessions, more food, more oil, more stuff for them.
But the South Korean government isn't taking any chances. First responders held an anti-terror drill at a subway station in Seoul this week. The exercise simulated a bomb attack by North Korea.
Our military is closely monitoring North Korean military movement and are ready to act. If North Korea takes any kind of self-justified action against South Korea, we will thoroughly and firmly punish them.
Although the North's saber rattling isn't unusual, some worry that tirades against South Korea and the U.S. have been particularly shrill this year. And unlike in past standoffs, experts worry the North is closer to a nuclear weapon and a long-range missile capability.
We've become numb to the threats, and that's not good. This time is also different because we're dealing with new leadership in North Korea, and that should concern us.
South Koreans are clearly not oblivious to what's going on in the North, but for now, though, life goes on, but with the constant reminder of a neighbor that's regularly bent on getting the world's attention. George Thomas, CBN News, Seoul, South Korea.
Yeah, Pat, the South Koreans have lived with that threat every day.
Well, it's so close, you know, the DMZ is right there next to Seoul. Seoul is a huge city, and it's right on the border. And, of course, within any kind of range of any sort of weapon. But the North could do great damage to that city. They could kill, you know, 1 million or more people without too much trouble. There would be retaliation. I think the North might be, you know, completely annihilated, but nevertheless, my prescription of this, and the South doesn't seem to want it, the South Koreans, but the people in North Korea want to flee that oppressive regime as fast as they can. What they've been doing is sneaking across the border into China, but the Chinese have been repatriating them back into North Korea, which of course means they'll be executed. But if the South would have a policy of opening their border and receiving people from the North, which they probably say, well, this give us a lot of saboteurs and undesirables, but nevertheless, that they are of the same basic race. There used to be one people, and if they would do that, North Korea would collapse because they wouldn't have any people. And you have to have people to have some kind of an economy, and if the people all leave, then there wouldn't be anything. And there would be a mass migration of North Koreans into South Korea if the South would open its borders. Now, of course, the North might retaliate and say, well, you know, this is a provocative act, and we therefore consider it an act of war. There are all kinds of permutations, but that would be my solution, and I think it would be a good one to sort of take the lid off that pressure cooker and watch what happens, because there would be a rapid destruction of the entire North Korean infrastructure. Lee?
Pat, George Beverly Shea, the baritone soloist that was part of so many Billy Graham crusades, has died. Shea sang for more than 200 million people in his 60 years with that organization. He often sang a peaceful hymn, he says, before Graham preached, because he said Billy, quote, loves the quiet before he speaks. Shea met Dr. Graham in Chicago in the 1940s, and he became an iconic member of the team that took the gospel across the country and indeed around the world. Graham said Shea was one of the most humble, gracious men I have ever known and one of my closest friends. I loved him as a brother. George Beverly Shea recorded dozens of gospel music albums and won a Grammy Award in 1965. He was nominated 10 times. George Beverly Shea was 104 years old. Pat?
Hey, we're all heading for the big one, big 100. I was down at Billy Graham's 90th birthday party they had over the Greenbrier Hotel, and George Beverly Shea was there looking wonderful. Such a humble man, unbelievable humility, and just so gracious. But he was known in that song he sang, How Great Thou Art, in that marvelous baritone.
That was my grandfather's favorite song, How Great Thou Art. Yeah, that's beautiful. 104, Pat, so
well,
there you go.
We're on the way. But,
yes.
I mean, he was just an amazing guy. But I think we all should learn from George Beverly. He was so calm. He didn't allow himself to get mad at anybody. He was always very humble and very gracious, and had himself under control. And so he didn't race his engines. He just lived his life, and he wanted to bring blessing to other people. So he's one of great saints, and the angels of heaven are rejoicing as he comes to take an honored place in God's heavenly kingdom. Lee?
And Pat, we're saddened to report the passing of a broadcasting legend. Pat Summerall died at the age of 82. He was a terrific athlete, played for those legendary New York Giants teams back in the 50s and early 60s, but he was best known as the play-by-play announcer who called some of the most memorable moments in sports, always in an understated fashion, letting the action tell the story. His calm on-air demeanor, though, disguised the demons of alcoholism. He was our guest on the 700 Club a few years ago, and he spoke of his newfound faith in Jesus Christ and the liver transplant that saved his life.
There were two friends of mine standing at the foot of the bed after it looked like the operation was going to be a success. And they were two pastor friends. And I asked them, why did I get another chance? Why do I deserve a new liver and another chance at life? And they said, as if they had practiced the answer, they said, because God's not through with you yet.
On a personal note, Pat Summerall was a big inspiration for me getting into this business 40 years ago. His mother and my dad were first cousins, and that connection has always been a big source of pride in my family. Pat, I admired him greatly. I remember as a little boy, I'm old enough to remember when he played for the New York Giants, but I also remember when he first broke into broadcasting, and my brother and I would sit in front of the television set with a tape recorder and pretend like we were Pat Summerall calling those football games.
Well, you learned some pretty good moves there. But what a great guy. He was a wonderful man, and unfortunately alcohol, slowed him down a bit, and he had I think a liver transplant, as he said, but he'll be missed. I don't know what it is. People, they do die. We're called mortal, and mort is the word for death, and we are mortal humans, and so we're all subject to death. But We're saddened when people like Margaret Thatcher pass on, George Beverly, Shea, Pat Summerall, and others we hear about. More and more people. People are living longer, but at the same time, when they begin to die, it saddens us to hear about it.
North Dakota's Republican governor has signed a bill outlawing abortions after 20 weeks. It's based on research stating that that's the point. A fetus can feel pain. The law is among the latest measures in North Dakota meant to challenge Roe versus Wade. That, of course, is the U.S. Supreme Court decision that legalized abortion up until viability. Last month, North Dakota's governor signed another measure banning abortions when a fetal heartbeat is detected. New Zealand's parliament has approved same-sex marriage. It's the 13th country in the world to do so and the first in the Asia-Pacific region. Lawmakers voted 77-44 in favor of the measure. Many people in New Zealand remain adamantly opposed to gay marriage, but some surveys there indicate about 2/3 of the public supports it. You can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.